Okay, let's say you've finished the op-ed, you have a great thesis, wonderful evidence, you've got a strong counter-statement, you've got a good news hook and a really strong lead. Is your job finished? No. You need to edit and polish the piece so that when you send it in to the editor, she looks at it and says, this piece is ready to go, it requires no work on my part. You need to be your own editor, and here are some strategies for doing that. Ideally, you want a second reader. I've been writing professionally for 25 years, and I never, ever submit a commentary without having somebody else read it first, because they'll notice things that I took for granted. They'll call me out on language that I've used that I thought was accessible but might not be to others. They'll pick holes when I haven't effectively bolstered my case. Ideally, you want somebody who's not in your field to read the op-ed because they're more likely to notice language that's not accessible to other people. Secondly, you can put the draft aside for an hour at least, and 24 hours if you have the luxury, because you'll notice things later that you can't notice when you're immersed in the actual writing. I also find it easy, if I print something off, I'll notice things on a printed page that I wouldn't have necessarily flagged when it's on my computer screen. I also will read my op-ed aloud to myself. That forces me to stumble over excessively long sentences or syntax that is awkward. It also helps me flag repeated references or words. If you use one word 10 or 20, or I read one the other day that used the word cancer 30 times, people's eyes glaze over with that amount of repetition. So you want to go back and look for ways to rephrase sentences to eliminate repetitious phrases or words. Editors are also really concerned that you keep to the specified word limit that they've identified. So the Ottawa Citizen, for example, will take op-eds of between 750 and up to 800 words sometimes, but the Globe and Mail requires 600 and no more. So you really don't want to send something that's too long for the vehicle that you're submitting to, because it will get tossed into the round file right away regardless of how great your arguments and evidence are. One other thing to look for in your piece is to make sure when you're reading the finished draft that you do in fact express a strong and clear opinion. It actually drives readers and editors nuts to read a piece where you're weighing both sides of an issue and it's not clear at the end of it what it is that you really think. If you have an informed opinion, we want to know what decision or conclusion you've come to. So make sure that your opinion for the opinion piece is actually present. You want not just the lead, but the entire op-ed to be as vivid and engaging as possible. You want to replace conceptual with concrete. You want to supplement general statements with specific ones. And you want to interrupt long sentences and paragraphs and even words with short ones. In fact, when you read the newspaper, you'll notice that newspaper style is for very short paragraphs. If you're used to writing academically, you'll often have very long paragraphs, but that's a deterrent to readers, especially when they're reading online or in a newspaper. They're busy, and shorter paragraphs keeps them reading. Let me give you just one example of a sentence that is long and abstract and conceptual where it doesn't need to be. We are pursuing mechanisms to enhance equity within the pedagogical environment to reduce attrition rates. You might have understood that, but lots of people won't, or they'll simply stop reading. And there's a much more dynamic and concrete way to say the same thing. The project aims to make classrooms fairer so more kids stay in school. Right away, a reader can imagine classrooms, can imagine kids, can imagine school in a way that she couldn't imagine attrition rates or pedagogical environment. So look for ways to make sure that you're speaking or writing as concretely as possible. As a backup, you can always run your completed text through the Gunning Fog Index. you can cut and paste your text into a box on the Gunning Fog website, and it will calculate the length of sentences and the words that you've used and spit out a number that reflects the number of years of education a reader will be required to have in order to easily make sense of what you've written. You might be surprised. The Gunning Fog Index is a really useful tool. It doesn't tell you which words or sentences to cut or eliminate or edit, but it will give you some feedback about how impenetrable your prose actually is. Okay, your op-ed is finished, it's polished, it's accessible, it's lively, it's engaging, and now comes the time to submit it to the editor with a compelling pitch that convinces the editor why she should read it and publish it now. So in one paragraph, you want to convince the editor that the thesis, the topic that you're writing about, is timely and interesting. You want to demonstrate why you're the best person to talk about it and to weigh in, and you want to convince her to run it now, not never. Once you've crafted your 1 or 2 sentence pitch to the editor, you're going to copy and paste your actual op-ed into the message box of your email. You're not going to send it as an attachment because that's one extra step for the editor, and it may in fact be a deterrent to her even opening your email. If she doesn't know you and there's an attachment, sometimes they don't bother. So you want your op-ed in the message box immediately beneath your pitch, and your pitch is immediately followed by your name, obviously, and your phone number, which allows her to contact you if she's interested by phone. And at the very bottom of your commentary, you want to insert one line that makes clear your credential relevant to the topic that you've chosen. So you might say, Jane Doe is researching copyright in Canada, or is a associate professor at the University of British Columbia, or is the author of a book on the topic, or has served on a panel or committee related to the issue, or is a recognized expert in this area. So something like that, just one line that sums up what your experience is. As for how you reach the editor, on the Informed Opinions website in our resources section, we have an entire page that lists the names and email addresses of most of the op-ed page editors at major dailies and prominent news websites in Canada. If our resources section doesn't in fact identify the editor of the vehicle that you're interested in submitting to, usually you can find that by going to their website, by looking at their contact page, and if they don't specify exactly who to send something to, just give them a call and say, I'd like to submit a commentary, to whose attention should I send it? After I've emailed my commentary to an op-ed page editor, I'll often follow up with a voicemail message reminder just to say, I've sent you this commentary, please let me know if you haven't received it. It's just a second hit at the editor letting them know that it's there, it's timely, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. If the editor has decided he or she wants to publish your op-ed, you'll usually hear from them in a day or two after submitting it. If you don't hear back from them, don't take it personally. They often receive 10, 20, sometimes 30 op-eds in a day. They have to wade through all of those and pick the ones that are not only polished, but also fit into whatever is current and urgent in the news at the time. And they're also dealing with limited space. So if your op-ed doesn't make the cut, it may have nothing to do with the quality of your argument and your writing. It may simply be a matter of other news taking priority at that time. What you might do then is rework the op-ed, submit it elsewhere, or change the lead and the news hook a month or two down the road and send it in again when circumstances might give it a better chance of being accepted and published.